This is how to front squat. The front squat is arguably one of the hardest squat variations to master. If you look at the data we have on the amount of people who can back squat 200 kilos or more, it's pretty small, probably around somewhere about 8%. And this is coming from a data pool of thousands and thousands of people. Now imagine how few people could ever front squat 200 kilos. Today, we're doing the most comprehensive front squat video that you'll see on the internet. We want to cover technique, programming, equipment, and mobility, so you have nowhere left to hide from improving your front squat. Now, if you need an example of what makes a good front squat and somewhat of an appeal to authority, here's me front squatting 240 kilos without a belt, and our co-host Dara front squatting 200 kilos as a slender man on the front squat. First up, we've got mobility. Undoubtedly, one of your biggest enemies when it comes to the front squat. It doesn't matter how strong your legs and back are, if you don't have the requisite mobility, you'll never be able to fully utilize your leg strength to hit the biggest front squat you can. Now, at the risk of turning this into a mobility video, let's speed run mobility for the front squat. Now, first up, we've got wrist flexibility. For some of you, this is going to be a massive problem, and for others, it's not going to be as big an enemy as you think it is. The great thing about wrist mobility is we're looking for a little bit more extension and our ability to rotate our forearm. One of the best ways we can go about doing this, not the only way, but one of the best ways, is simply getting some soft tissue work on your forearm. Do this for about a total of 3 minutes. Find a spot that feels owie and rotate and flex and extend your wrists like Dara is doing here. Next up, we've got the triceps of the front of the arm, the bicep. This will help alleviate a lot of the pressure on your elbow, especially if your elbows are feeling tight or achy when you're front squatting. Getting some soft tissue work on the bicep is probably going to be something that's a lot more painful than you think it will be, but will be really worth it when you're looking for quality front racks. Next up, we're going to use a technique known as proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, or PNF. All this means is Dara is going to push into the rack with his fists for about 10 seconds, not maximum effort, about 20 or 30% of the effort you could put in. Then after 10 seconds, he's going to try and compress his shoulder towards his fist. Now, as you can see with Dara, he has got excellent range of motion here. The elasticity of the soft tissue here is fantastic. For a lot of us, including myself, this is going to be very, very tight. So go slowly and try not to irritate the tricep tendon too much. This is incredibly useful. Next up, we've got the preacher stretch. So what Dara has done here is placed a resistance band around his biceps, pulling his elbows in together. He has taken a grip that is just outside the elbows, palms facing him. What he's trying to do is round his upper back as much as possible and then get his head as low as he possibly can while rounding the upper back. This one is a doozy. It can be a little bit painful, so go slowly. Try not to push it too hard and try and ease yourself into doing the stretch. It is, however, a great one, especially if you're a bigger dude. This is incredibly useful. Now we're going to do some soft tissue work on the lats, and you're going to use a kettlebell. I don't want you using a foam roller or nothing too easy. I want a kettlebell or a very, very hard ball in the lats. What you're going to do here is find any point, essentially from the bottom of the ribs up all the way into the armpit. Make a hand as straight as you can make it, and then wave it around until you feel a little bit of a release. I guarantee you, for most of you watching this one will be incredibly useful for that ability to externally rotate the shoulders. I know even though the lats are primarily internally rotators of the shoulder, this is still a really useful one to do. I would highly encourage you to do this and get it to a point where your lats aren't incredibly painful every time you roll them. Next up, we're going to focus on the thoracic. Now, there is loads of great thoracic drills that we can use, but one of the ones we're going to start with is some thoracic rotations. So the side you're rotating towards, I want you to raise your heel off the ground and slightly bend your knee like a horse resting its leg. Then you're going to cross your hands on top of your chest and rotate slowly while still breathing regularly to the side you're trying to mobilize. Each time you go back for rotation, I want you to try go a little bit further. I want you to do this for about 4 or 5 sets of 10 reps, and I bet you'll find that after a couple of sessions of this, it will be a lot better. Now, there's a lot of different ways we can hit the hips for the front squat. This is probably one of the best catch-alls that we can do to make it the most specific for the front squat that we can. What we're going to do is start with an outside shoulder width stance, toes pointing straight ahead. And then what we're going to do is try and reduce the distance from the wall to your glutes. To make this harder, you bring your glutes closer to the wall until you're as close as you can possibly get. Then we're going to go either wider or narrower with your foot stance until you feel that this is challenging your hips in a sufficient manner. What you're going to do then is push your knees out while keeping your toes straight ahead and holding this for a couple of seconds. And I want you to play around with either widening or narrowing your foot stance. Don't compensate by turning toes out. Try and keep this toe straight forward and shimmying closer to the wall. Then we try and keep that lower back in a reasonable position and do this for about a total of 5 minutes. And I promise you, your hips are going to be well primed for the front squat. Lastly, we've got one of the best ankle mobility drills you're going to ever do, and this is the weighted band distracted split squat. Now, for a lot of people, this might seem like a little bit of a gimmick, and you might feel like that band isn't actually doing anything. But what I want you to do is get a lot of band tension on your ankle when you're doing this exercise, and use as much weight as you can tolerate on the front knee. Then we're going to hold this for a minimum of 30 seconds, but longer if you can tolerate it. I want you to get a couple of sets on either side.
There are three main technical errors people make during their front squats. The first of these is their torso angle, and basically the relationship between their shoulders and hips. Because the barbell sits in front of our torso during the front squat, people incorrectly believe that our torso should be as vertical as possible as we go throughout the entire squat. In fact, we have to have a slight forward lean throughout the entire front squat to ensure we have a good front rack position and our hips and glutes can drive as we stand back up. This ideal amount of torso lean starts at the top of the squat. When I'm standing here with a barbell unracked, I want to make sure I don't squeeze my glutes through and stand in this fully locked out position. Rather, when I have a bar on my back, my hips should be back, my lower back should be engaged, and I should have a slight bend in my knee. This then has that slight level of forward torso lean throughout the entire squat, and it's very easy for me to maintain a good front rack position. The second most common error people make during their front squat is thinking about the front rack position incorrectly. The front rack position is essentially a shelf that's made up of my shoulders, my hands, my clavicles, and everything else on the front of my chest. Many beginners start off by front squatting like this. They might even tuck their thumbs under the bar in a false grip position because they feel like this is where the bar should sit. Now, it's easily understood why. We're used to pressing in this position and even push pressing in positions similar to this. But for our front squat, you can see this will put a massive amount of pressure on our wrists. Oftentimes people incorrectly believe that this super tight front rack position is due to poor mobility. There can certainly be cases, and many beginners will be in that situation, where you need to do more stretching and more soft tissue work to achieve that front rack position more easily. But in most cases, the front rack position isn't being achieved because people have neither the confidence nor the experience to know what a good front rack position feels like. It might feel funny to think about confidence during a front rack position and think that's the reason why I can't achieve a good position, but for many of you, that's why you'll hold onto the barbell too tightly and you won't let it sit on your chest. A great way to start learning where the barbell should sit is a zombie front squat. A zombie front squat is sitting the barbell across my two shoulders and my collarbones, getting my arms out straight and my thumbs up to the ceiling, and doing a squat in this position. The zombie squat is great because it forces you to keep that ideal torso angle throughout the entire squat, and it allows you to feel where the barbell should sit on your chest. So using variations like the zombie squat, that cross grip, or even front squats with straps is incredibly useful to allow you to achieve those good positions and get some valuable training done. The most common thing we're asked at this point though is, should I just train using those different variations? And the answer, as many times it is it depends. And it really depends on whether you're a weightlifter or not. If you're a weightlifter, you should always be pushing towards that ideal clean grip front squat position. If you're in any of the other user groups, whether it's S&C for sport, front squats for getting a bit more quad hypertrophy, or whether you just want to be strong and powerful, you can use one of the alternative grips. I will say though, all of those variations are not necessarily born equal, and I do like the variations where we're strapped into the bar or have a bit more tension in our upper back to maintain that good postural position. The third and final aspect of front squat technique we want to focus on then is stance width and toe orientation. Our stance width and toe orientation make sure the timing between our hip movement and knee movement is correct, and also make sure our knees are tracking in the correct direction. Stance width and toe orientation must be correct for our front squat. If our stance is too wide, it will become too hip dominant. If it's too narrow, it will demand too much ankle mobility from me. If Owen comes to that super narrow squat stance here, he'll be able to do a squat because he has phenomenal levels of ankle mobility. If most of us mere mortals try and do it, we'll probably get to just above parallel. The second aspect then is how far out I should rotate my toes. Now, there are undoubtedly morphological differences between humans, and some people will need to point their toes out or in slightly more than others. Generally speaking though, around 15 to 20 degrees of external rotation is going to be sufficient for most people. This will allow our knees to push out over our middle toe, and it will ensure there's room for my hips to drop down into a deep squat position. All of that being said, nothing matters more in the front squat than pushing your knees forward and ensuring you're in a quad dominant position throughout. Pushing the knees forward is where people get a small bit confused though. What happens a lot of the time is we'll push our knees forward as we sit down, and then once we hit that bottom position, the knees will immediately bounce back, our hips will rise up, and our torso will fall forward. This forces us into that poor low elbow position, puts a lot of pressure on our wrists and upper back, and is probably the main reason people fail their front squats. So when you're doing your front squats, make sure you push your knees forward. Imagine a wall in front of your kneecap, and you're going to keep your knee pushed against that wall the whole way back up. I bet in your next front squat session, if you really focus on that knees forward position, particularly on the ascent, you're going to notice more of a quad pump than you've ever gotten in your life before. Oftentimes when we want to get deeper in our front squat, people will make the mistake of pushing their knees out to the side even more. Now what happens when I push my knees out to the side is I actually bring my knee back in space slightly. So if I'm here in this forward knee position, I get a lot of quad dominance and a lot of quad recruitment. As I push my knees out to the side more, my knee moves back behind the level of my toes and I don't develop my quads quite so much. The final issue with that is as I push my knees out to the side more, my hips can drop further and come forward over my base of support. You might think this is good because your hips are coming forward, allowing you to get into that more upright torso angle. But as we said at the very start, it's incredibly important to have a slight amount of forward torso lean throughout your entire front squat.
Now, when it comes to front squatting and what equipment you can use, we've got a couple of different options available to us. The first option is a weightlifting shoe. This has an elevated heel and a hard sole underfoot. This allows you to essentially improve your mobility artificially and increase the quality of squat by increasing the force transfer through the ground. I would say these are almost a non-negotiable unless you have a very particular reason or goal. If you're just looking for the best quality front squat, weightlifting shoes should be in your gear bag. The other options then are optional and it's up to you whether you wish to use them or not. Now, knee sleeves and a belt will increase the quality of your squat. You'll get a little bit of a mechanical spring from knee sleeves and you'll get a little bit of an extra better quality brace from the belt. These will increase the weight and the quality of your front squat, and so as a result will increase the amount of kilos you'll hit at the end of a training block. This is somewhat personal, but I would recommend most of you use this. This is not exactly using multiply equipment. It's literally 5 to 7 mil knee sleeves and some kind of belt. Lastly, you have the option to use a different kind of grip on the front squat, and that is using weightlifting straps. This can be quite useful if you're lacking mobility or have some kind of injury.
Your final question for us then is probably how do I get a better front squat? And of course, this is all down to your programming. Programming the front squat is incredibly important. It should not be something where you just do 2 or 3 sets of doubles or triples at the end of the week. You should be constantly looking at your front squat programming and making it as efficient as possible. The first thing to say here though is that our front squat is built upon the backbone of having a good back squat. So if you're somebody who's currently back squatting 140 and maybe front squatting 120, you're going to get the best results possible by bringing that back squat number up and then bringing the front squat number up afterwards. If you'd like to save yourself a massive amount of time and get the best front squat program available today, check out the Sika Strength app and our brand new front squat program. It's 12 weeks in duration, just 2 sessions per week. It has all of your front squat prescription, all of the accessories, everything you need to get the best front squat you can possibly get. So how do we actually program for the front squat? Well, when we're programming anything, we look at a few variables. The first of these is frequency. The frequency you should be front squatting with is around twice per week. There's a massive amount of people will get a better front squat by front squatting just once per week with your 2 other back squats, but during your specific front squat peaking period, you should definitely be front squatting twice in the week. The second thing then is total volume. Front squatting is quite unique in the fact where we won't do quite as much volume, or particularly we won't do quite as much volume in each working set as we might do on something like the deadlift or the back squat. There are 2 reasons for this. The first reason is that the front squat is very positionally demanding. What do I mean by this? Well, what we mean is as you get more tired, it is more difficult to maintain those good positions. When the barbell is on my back, I can use the entire of my posterior chain to make sure I have a good torso position and I won't tilt forward or start losing that spinal alignment. When I'm very tired and fatigued, my front squat isn't going to be quite as good at maintaining those good strong positions. Now, the second reason we don't do quite as much volume on the front squat is we have smaller motor units working for us and there's not as many motor units working for us, full stop. So during something like a hex bar deadlift or a back squat, whether it be low bar or high bar, I'm going to be able to use my glutes, my posterior chain in its entirety. I'm going to use my quads. Everything I have essentially is going to be working for me. In the front squat though, I'm going to have a hell of a lot more of the anterior chain working, and it's mainly just my quads are going to be helping me drive that barbell up from the floor. This is the similar reason where your strict overhead press is going to be significantly lower than something like your bench press. Next, we should look at intensity, and the good news is intensity is very easy to manage on our front squat. The intensity metrics we're going to start at will look very similar than where they would on something like a back squat program. In our case, we're going to start off with 3 sets of 8 reps at around 55% of 1 rep maximum, and this will allow you a very smooth on-ramping with an estimated 5% increase from week to week as our amount of reps slowly teeters down. Finally then, the accessories. So Owen's going to do a speed run through our accessories, and these are our top accessory movements you need to do for a better front squat.
Last, but certainly not least, we can't forget about assistance exercises. Assistance exercises are incredibly valuable for improving the quality and quantity of the main lift that we're doing. I know we don't really enjoy doing them sometimes. It's not the most fun or exciting, but let's pick 3 of the most crucial and hard-hitting areas that we can do in our assistance exercises to improve our front squat, especially during a front squat heavy training cycle. The first place we're going to start is Bulgarian split squats. Now, when you're doing assistance exercises for the lower body and you're really trying to narrow down what you're doing, you should almost always hedge your bets for a single leg exercise. If we're doing a big bilateral movement like the front squat or the back squat for a training cycle as our main mover, then we should almost always look for that single leg exercise. I know asymmetries and imbalances have become a bit of a cliche and a little bit of a naughty word in the industry currently, but our view is it's always worth hedging those bets and trying to reduce the asymmetry somewhat. If, for example, you can do 20 kilos total on one side, but you can do 25 kilos on the other side, and there's a big notable difference, you cannot convince us that that's not going to negatively impact your front squat in some manner, and there's no reason not to spread the load across both legs and give them some individual attention. Next, when it comes to one of the main drivers for our upper body assistance exercise, the upper back is going to be our main focus, and one of our personal favorites is seal rows, and particularly dumbbell or kettlebell 45-degree seal rows. We like this because it really allows you to isolate the area you're looking to work on. If you're doing a lot of other training, if you're doing deadlifts, you're front squatting, you're back squatting, you might be weightlifting or playing a sport, it is good in some scenarios like this, for example, to really isolate the area we're looking for in that assistance exercise. For this, you can go to town on the reps and the volume. We don't care if you go really heavy, we don't care if you go for hyper volume, whatever it is, it'll get the job done as long as you're pushing one of those metrics. We usually like to keep the volume pretty high here per set, maybe 8 to 12 reps, and probably push it for somewhere between 4 and 5 sets. It's a great exercise. I'd highly recommend adding it into your training if you have the option. Lastly, we've got weighted sit-ups. Now, I know in recent years, weighted sit-ups have got a bit of a bad rap, mainly concerns around lower back flexion under weight, but it's not really something we're majorly concerned about. And it's very hard to replicate just heavy weighted flexion like this. These are a great exercise. You can do them pretty much anywhere. You can do them with GHD, you can do them with a partner, you can do them against a squat rack like this. Whatever those options are, they're scalable, you can load them, and you can do them for a pretty decent volume. It's a hard one to replicate. There's lots of great core exercises and all of them work, but when it comes to having a big front squat, weighted sit-ups are going to be an absolute killer for you. Look, I know front squats are hard and it's not an exercise a lot of people enjoy doing, but I promise you, if you run our 12-week squat program on the Sika Strength app, your relationship with front squats will be redefined. Lastly, if you're really concerned about how you can improve your knowledge around strength training, in the link below is a accumulation of all our best knowledge around strength training. Sign up, we'll send you an email a day for 30 days, and it is quite literally the best knowledge we know for free into your email box for a month.